Hello everyone, this is this is driving lesson number 6. It has been driving lesson number 6, and let me give the overview for just driving lesson number 6. Today I talked less, I asked fewer questions, I tried to think before asking a question and limit and have higher quality questions. I try to observe more than instead of asking a lot of questions, and it was more efficient. More efficient. How was it more efficient? How do I structure this video? We can start by saying, what did I learn that was new? And okay, let's start with what I learned that was new. I learned that the traffic lights, there could be someone in the control room controlling the traffic lights, or it could be automatic. How do I know that? I asked him a question. I was asking him about the traffic lights and how long they would take until they turn off, because he knew when to start pressing the car on the gas, on the accelerator. And I was asking him, hey, how do you know that? And I still didn't get a clear answer from him. He was saying, oh, experience. And I told him that's not a metric. You need to give me a metric, a measurement. Not experience. Experience means it's not a replicable system. You telling someone, hey, I know this from experience, how can he replicate the system? I didn't tell him that you wouldn't be able to replicate the system. I told him, if you don't give me a measurement, I'm not going to be able to. I told him, how would I be able to know when to press on the gas and everything? Because to give context, he knew when the light would turn orange. And I asked him, was it because you saw the other cars stopping? I didn't take notice if it was because of the other cars stopping. I didn't see if that pattern was related. And he didn't confirm that, because I did ask him that. And I think he said no, and then he switched on to experience. That was one thing I learned. Another thing, we were doing the reversing, and I was trying to learn. The angles he's using, the reference points. I told him, what are your reference points to be able to turn? First of all, let me tell you, every time I ask a question, what happens? Not every time. I think it's my word choice. I say a word, and then sometimes, not all the time, he starts to have this raised voice, as if, oh, I already said that. Raised voice. And And it might be my word choice. Maybe that's something to test. Maybe if I test another word to use, but this still the same question, maybe that could bring different results. And hey, just by talking to someone who gets agitated easily is good practice for my communication skills and what words I should use beforehand to prevent their brain from heuristically answering the question. Another point, I asked him, okay, is it just what do other students, because I was asking him a lot of questions about this reversing the car, and let me tell you on which point exactly I was asking the question. It was on reversing, and let me tell you the process of reversing. You have our car, the car I'm driving, and then you have the other car over here. Can I? This is the car I'm driving. This goes forward, this goes back. And here is another car. And we have to go behind it. Can't show it clearly. You have a car and you have to go behind that car. And let me tell you his instructions. Have the back of our car, okay, this is our car, and let's say this is the back of our car. And let's say this is another car. It has to be diagonal. That should show it clearly. See this diagonal, 45. I think that's a problem from my part, not knowing the angles correctly. That's the reason I'm learning mathematics. I need to go over my fundamentals, and I need to still learn mathematics because I want to do I'm creating a plan for school, and I'll get into that in probably another video, because this is a side tangent. But I'm trying to learn calculus. Let me go over them real quick. Physics till bachelor's of science, and then economics, bachelor of science, those are 2, and then advanced level, because in America you have the AP exam, but where I am in Europe you have the advanced level exam, which correlates to AP. They're almost the same. I'm not sure on exactly the conversions because I haven't looked at both the exams, and I can't tell you which has more advanced calculations. But let me name the advanced. English is very important. That's what I want to do. And even literature, I thought literature was what's the reason you're doing literature? My brain didn't have any context on it. If I look past my prior statement, my brain was, let's say, around 8 years ago. Literature was the need of literature. That was how my brain processed literature. But now I see a need, because when you look at literature, you see, this is the reason I didn't want to go down the route of subjects, because I'm going to keep on talking about that, but now I'm aware of it and I'm actually controlling it. And okay, let's not talk about literature. just name the subjects: English, and then economics, physics, mathematics, calculus. Mathematics, we get to what level of mathematics? Let's do the A-level mathematics, and then we see what we need once we're doing the physics. But the school part is structured with online business. They go hand in hand. I'm not going to go full out school without generating money online, because that wouldn't be efficient. But I'm realizing the more I learn about school, the easier I perceive the world, and I'm realizing that, hey, your communication is poor because you're not educated. Your brain is assuming something because it's not educated. I'm realizing I'm just not educated. It's as simple as that. I'm just not educated. That's the reason you find some things which use more energy on, because you're not educated. You're not educated on that subject, and therefore you use more energy. It's as simple as that. And now what I'm doing is I'm creating a plan. All the subjects, I have all the subjects already, but now I'm creating the requirements to enter. I only did Harvard and MIT. I didn't do Stanford, but I have the school, and I'm not sure about the resources, but I know that's one of my options, where to go, because I'm still not sure if it's efficient for me to go to school. I'm not sure if that's efficient, because we still have our online business which we have to account in this equation. Because online business wise, I've already made money with an online business. I sold hearing aids to the German market, and then I realized that hearing aids are classified as medical devices for Germany, and the manual would have to be in German, which mine was in English. I also got a refund, which I had to. It didn't dispute anything on PayPal, but they sent me a message, told me, hey, one of the earpieces isn't working, and he said, I'm not going to send these to China. Give me a German address. And I didn't know what to do exactly at that time. What I could have done is told them. The reason I didn't tell them, hey, no, you're going to send me a photo, make sure that you're going to send me a video, I'm going to make sure that you're not scamming me, right? The seller, you're not scamming me. And then we can talk about the German address and everything, which I don't have a German address to ship the products to. Right? I was drop shipping these items and using Shopify and using Funnelish. And then we can talk about, hey, shipping them to China. But in my policy, I didn't have any of this. Now, could I have changed the policy at that time and then told him, hey, you have to do X, Y, and Z? Maybe. But they still have a 14-day withdrawal for the EU. And what that means is they can refuse, even if it's not defected or anything. They could, I might be mistaken on this, but if it's not defected, they could say, hey, we want a refund, not a refund, we want to return the item. And I think they have to pay for the shipping, if I'm not mistaken. And guess who was my mentor? artificial intelligence, right? ChatGPT, Google AI Pro Mode. And what's Google AI Pro Mode going to tell you? You refund everything. Right? I didn't factor in that, hey, they could be scamming me. And he was saying, I did send him a message, hey, send me a video and everything. And he said, hey, I'm 72, I'm in nurse mode 2, something like that. It was something in nurse 2, it was some classification for the current state they're in, which, and the Google AI was, or ChatGPT, I forgot which mentor I was speaking to at that time. They were saying, oh, even nurse mode, he's in nurse mode as well and do X, Y, and Z. Which I don't even know if being in nurse mode is irrelevant to anything. I don't know if that changes anything. Because if you look at it from my perspective, I can get scammed, but still the 14-day mode, they can say, I want to return them. Okay, you can return them, but China, return them to China, but I didn't know that, right? I didn't explicitly say it in my policy and everything. Do I need to do that? Probably you do. I'm not sure. And I stopped selling hearing aids, and I took a break. Hey, I need to reevaluate my current. What am I doing? And I didn't take a break from that. Exactly what I did. Let me just say this last part and then stop talking about e-commerce. I had on my Facebook comments. Maybe I'll show these. I don't run this. I don't run this hearing aid store anymore because it's not something that I want to do. Long term it doesn't have. That's a side tangent. Let me state the facts. Facebook had plenty of comments, all in German. Because the picture, let me not talk about the picture, I'm going to go on another side tangent if I talk about it. It was a picture that had to do with hearing aids and comparison, not before and after, but two hearing aid devices, one looks old, one looks new, and there are multiple different comments that I'm simplifying things, saying that it's, again, I'm going to go on a side tangent if I talk about this. I'm trying to compress everything. What was my point? My point was comments. I forgot my point. What's the reason I'm going on the comments? Let me talk about what I did. Okay, the reason because I raised the prices. I was selling my hearing aids for, I think, €142.95, and I raised the prices to €249.95, and I was getting these for €30, supplying these cogs at around 39 with shipping. Therefore, that's around 200 pure profit if you don't factor in any other fees, just by selling one pair. And the reason I raised the prices was, one of them was saying, hey, these are cheap, and what do you expect something this cheap? What do you expect from something this cheap? They're all from China. And I was selling them at €150. Therefore I was saying, hey, what if I raise the prices €100 plus? Maybe now they won't think they're from China. I raised the prices and I get one sale, but then no sales. That's when I stopped everything. Probably if I kept it on €149.95, I could have gotten more sales. Because I only had one proper test, €149.95, with the particular ad that I had. But I'm narrating this. This was around 3 to 4 months ago. This was a very long time ago, and I stopped hearing aids. That's it, and now I'm learning. Actually, I think it was shorter than 3 or 4 months ago. I think it was around 2 to 3 months ago. I could check. Let me not go on the side tangent again. I already went on around 8 side tangents. I was talking about the car, now I'm talking about dropshipping, e-commerce. Okay, let's talk about what I intended my video to talk about on, to talk on about, to talk about on, to talk. I'm going to talk about the car and what I learned, the controller, we talked about that, and then he said he had experience with the knowing the times of the car. He told me one of them has 50 seconds. I told him, okay, 50 seconds, and I know there's different variations. That's when he went on the, hey, there's some with controllers, automatic, and some controller, which is manual, someone in the room doing the scene from a live camera. I didn't confirm if it was from a live camera, but that's what I'm assuming. Which I probably should have asked, but this is probably documented online, and it would be more accurate than getting this information from him, right? But you would have to calculate those costs, and if you want to get information from him and then confirm it on the internet, or get the internet confirmation first, then confirm it with him, or then realize what's the reason you're asking these questions, how are they benefiting what your objectives are, how do they align with your objectives. That was my whole point. Let me talk about the lesson, because last video I think we extracted a lesson from the dentist appointment that you should What was the lesson from last video? I think it was that you should have a set of written things on paper, and it might be something similar to what I'm about to say right now. Because I created this but this was a lesson from the dentist. Does it relate to this? But it does, because I used it in this lesson as well. And this was the having objectives, having the set objectives, and actually, did I use it this lesson? I'm not sure if I did use it. Let me just name the lesson. Having a set objective, or objectives. Okay, you have these objectives. You have your number one goal over here. This is your main goal. And we can call that main goal the telos. Which, if I'm not mistaken, telos. I could just check this right now. Let me check this right now. Telos definition. Telos is an ancient Greek term that translates to end, goal, purpose, or ultimate aim. Full stop. In philosophy, particularly in the work of Aristotle, it refers to the intrinsic purpose or final cause of a natural entity, comma, object, comma, or human action. Okay, from its history we know it came from Aristotle, which was a philosopher, a Greek philosopher, I think from our understanding, from what we just read. And telos means end goal. You have your telos over here, you have your different objectives right now, your current environment, your current circumstances. Hey, objectives to get to here. How am I going to get to here? You have these set objectives, and you set down your objectives, right? You write them down, memorize them, and you get those objectives. You achieve those objectives in with the lowest latency possible. And latency means when you write down the objective, right? That's when the timer starts, you could say. You write down the objective, and when you achieve it, that's the whole loop. And that would be, how long did it take from when you wrote it to when you achieved it? Right, when you wrote it and then when you achieved it. We wrote it, and then we achieved it. How much time did that take? That would be the latency. Example, I wrote an objective. It took me 2 weeks to finish that objective. The latency was 2 weeks. And your objective is to have the objective written down and have it in the lowest latency possible, while you could say not jeopardizing the telos, right? You have your objectives and you have your telos, and I have this written down. Let me find it. It was I used the word sustainable until you achieve your telos. And the reason I used the word sustainable, I think I used the word sustainable because, let's say, you have your objectives and use an algorithm to get those objectives. What's an algorithm? What's the definition for using an algorithm? How I define it, or how it's factually defined. How about we define algorithm and remove any assumptions we have in our brain? Doesn't matter. Let's see. Algorithm definition. And I'll tell you how I defined it. Or should I define it first? But now I've already seen what it says. Let me say how I define it. Algorithm how I define algorithm. And now my brain, what it's thinking is about the definition I've just seen. Let me just talk about the definition then. Algorithm is a step-by-step set of instructions or rules designed to perform a task or solve a specific problem. Do you see how this connects with the objectives? And then should we use their analogy that they're using over here? We can. Okay, let me use their analogy, even though I'm not sure. Over here, the analogy they use And I'm not saying I agree or don't disagree with analogies. I think it depends when you should use analogies. But let's just use it because in the last definition I gave for the telos, I read the first paragraph, and if I don't read this analogy, I would only be reading half a paragraph. Let me just read on the whole paragraph, regardless of what I think if we should read it or not. They say, think of it like a recipe. As long as you follow the steps in the correct order, you get the same result every time. Now let me repeat the definition. An algorithm is a step-by-step set of instructions or rules designed to perform a task or solve a specific problem. Let's give our summary. Task, objective. With the objective we have this set of instructions. Then you have this set of instructions over here to get the objective. And the set of instructions, that's the algorithm. And how I was defining algorithm before, and I used the word sustainable. Remember, I used the word sustainable. Achieving your objectives with the lowest latency while being sustainable for the telos. And the reason I use sustainable because of this reason, because of the algorithm. Because let's say I use an algorithm, a set of instructions from what we've seen, for achieving the mini objective, right? Over here we have the telos, over here we have the mini objectives, right? And let's say I use an algorithm to get to these objectives, and I use a certain algorithm. And I use the algorithm. What's the reason I use the algorithm? Because it's the same, and I could improve and not improve on it. And I could improve on the algorithm because it's the same variable, right? I'm using this algorithm, and let's say this algorithm, hey, this works for this objective over here, this algorithm works. But if I use this algorithm for the telos, if I look 20 years ahead, the instructions, the algorithm that I'm using for this objective isn't going to work for this telos. And that's the reason I use the word sustainable. Because, hey, we want an algorithm that's sustainable for this telos. Because what if let's imagine this scenario. I use an algorithm for these objectives, but let's say, okay, if I go through with getting these objectives with this algorithm, then I know 100% for sure that I wouldn't achieve the telos. Then you would definitely not go with this algorithm because you wouldn't achieve your end goal. Now, I'm not saying that that reflects reality, something that there could be something that if you go through with it, you will 100% not achieve your telos. Does it represent reality? Are there examples in the real world where that could happen? Maybe and maybe not. But it's the concept. It's that, hey, that buffer for your brain to think. And this isn't a binary thing. Right? There could be in some situations where, hey, I need to use these algorithms right now for these objectives, and I know that if I keep using these algorithms, they're not sustainable for these telos, but I'm aware of that, and I'm only going to use it right now for these objectives because I calculated that it would be the most efficient right now that I do that. And I realized that I would have to change my algorithms later, but right now it's more efficient for me to use these algorithms for these objectives. You see, that's conditional. It's not binary where, hey, you have to do this or that's it. No. You have conditions. Hey, you can do this and this, and maybe you can even do that, and maybe based on this you do this. It's conditional. And I think the last lesson was something about balance. I'm not sure if I did mention this, but it's not binary. its balance, right? And that's another lesson from this lesson that I've just talked about right now, which is the objectives, and having the objective, achieving the objectives with the lowest latency possible while being sustainable for the talos, right? Being aware of the talos, taking that always into consideration with everything you do. Because if you do something and you know 100%, we can call this the reason we have talos in the back of our mind for every single thing. The reason we have that every single time. What's the reason we have talos inside our brain every single time? What's the reason? The reason we have that is because we want to make sure that what we're doing can still make achieving the talos possible. Okay? If we're doing something that makes the talos 100% not possible, then you don't go through with it. And you change your method, you change your methodology, you change your objective, what you're about to do. And that saves you energy. This is the reason for algorithms, right? Now you can say a section, reason for algorithms. What's the reason you use algorithms? To save energy. To save energy, to make faster decisions while not losing quality, right? And we can also talk about, hey, how do you know 100% it won't work? You only know that because from your own brain, right? And if you're only using your brain as data, then can't you be making a premature decision and not informed decision? Can't you be making a mistake? Yes, I could be talking right now and everything I'm saying is completely wrong because my brain right now perceives it as, hey, this makes sense right now, but it only knows it makes sense because of the data I have in my brain and from what my brain learned. And that's with every single human being, because every single human being has a brain, and that brain thinks how it thinks because of what data that brain has. Now on the car, and what I'm realizing is, another lesson is, it's not about positive experiences. I had this lesson that I've written down, I think today. Check. Deciding between achieving your set objectives versus feeling as if it was a positive experience. I mean, let's talk about this real quick. Let's use my dentist example from last week. I had set objectives, right? I want to know what software they're using, this dentist place, to manage their offices, to manage their employees. Did I get that objective? Did I achieve that objective? Yes, I did. How did I achieve it? I first spoke to the lady that I was talking about, who I told that and let me make this coherent because I'm not explaining it clearly right now, because my communication skills aren't where I want them to be right now. And that was, I went to the receptionist, hey, I have an appointment. Hey, actually I didn't even do that. I went to the reception, and I explained this in the last video. I said, hey, I have two questions. Number one, I have an appointment with X, which that isn't even a question, that's a statement. But I connected with that and I said, now how will you inform them that I'm here? I don't think actually I didn't use those exact words, I used different words, I have them on the last video. And I can't tell them to you right now because I don't remember them clearly. Because this has been I went to the dentist on Tuesday and today is Saturday. That's a total of 5 days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 4 days. It's total of 4 days. Exactly. And she didn't know the software app. She looked at her colleague. Hey, what's the software app? And then the other colleague, actually, she didn't even understand me at first. And then the other colleague said, because she was talking about the SMS. I told her, oh, you're talking about SMS. Oh no, I'm not talking about SMS. Hey, I'm talking about what software do you use to talk to your colleague right now. And then her colleague, because the colleague, not colleague, the one next to her, the colleague, the dentist, how are you going to communicate with the dentist? Like, came here for the appointment for, how are you telling him that I'm here? How does that work? And then the colleague for this person I was talking to, she said, oh, I think he's saying he wants to know how it works. And they both looked at each other, and then hey, I don't know, do you know? Hey, I don't. And then they looked at the other two people on their right side. Hey guys, do you know the software that we use for? And then one of the person was looking, hey, what was the reason? He said, hey, please excuse me for doing this. What's the reason? I excuse myself because I'm going on too many side tangents. I need to be clear with my communication and straight to the point. Right now I'm prolonging what I'm trying to say for what reason? Right, I'm making this video less efficient for my audience, for the audience watching. And that is less efficient. What I need to do is communicate the lesson. That's what I need to do, to communicate the lesson and structure it. And then I got the software name, and he told me, hey, what's the reason you want the X, Y, and Z? Oh, I just want to know the business side's perspective. I'm interested. This is what I said. I'm interested in the business side's perspective. Now, syntactically, I'm not sure if that's accurate. If I said, hey, I'm interested in the business side's perspective for the dentistry place, something like that. I said, and his colleague was like, hey, that's not needed. That's not needed. She was saying for him, hey, it's okay. And then she told me the software's name, and hey, what can you say? This test worked. I went with a set of questions beforehand. I asked those questions. I got the answer to those questions. But it's not only that. It did take me, if you calculate the time, around, how long was that? 2 to 3 minutes. It took me around 2 to 3 minutes to get that information. And I was thinking, hey, what if I had a sheet of paper? And I gave her the sheet of paper. Hey, give me the software app name that you use. Would that have been more effective or less effective? How would you know? You test it, right? You test that. And that really came to mind when I spoke to the periodontist, the dentist that I had an appointment with. I was realizing, hey, I was telling him what I have. He was telling me his solutions. Nothing was being written down on paper. Everything was with the mouth. Everything was being communicated verbally. Nothing was being written and recorded. And I did have a set of questions. And I did have a set of objectives, and I didn't get those objectives done. And I didn't get those objectives done because there were unexpected. I'm looking at the time right now. I'm around 45 minutes in talking. I didn't realize I've been talking that long. Literally what I'm doing right now is I'm repeating the last video, which actually I'm going to stop repeating what I said in the last video because that's inefficient for you guys, right? Whoever is watching, that's inefficient for you. I'm repeating the same stuff from last video. Even though last video I said I'm going to structure last video, which I'm not doing right now. I'm not structuring last video. Yes, it might be more structured than last video, but it's still not structured. Okay, let me continue with the driving lessons, and you can pause this dentist part, put it on the side. Hey, go watch last video. Maybe write down in comments or something. If you feedback, right? Feedback from my communication. What are you seeing? You know, that's really. I'm asking my viewers to tell me what I'm doing inefficiently in the videos. How about I do that? To learn, you would have to do this yourself as well. I need to do it myself. I need to go watch my videos back. What am I not explaining clearly, and do that myself? And I welcome any viewer to give feedback, always, because I want to learn. Now let's talk about the driving license, the driving lesson number 6. We talked about the control room, manual and automatic. We got through that. When we were talking about the reversing and how he was getting agitated, and then how I could have maybe used a different set of words to not trigger that heuristic response from the driving instructor's brain. And he was okay, we're doing the reverse, and he said, hey, once you're diagonal with the car, then fully turn the steering wheel. Actually, one turn to the steering wheel, to the left side. And he has to realize, right? Actually, why am I structuring he has to realize? It's not factual, right? What's factual? The facts, hey, do it once. The facts, I didn't understand it instantly. Those are the facts. Was there a reason I didn't understand that instantly? I'm not used to the car, right? But do you see what I'm saying? You're not used to the car. What does being used to the car mean? The car has measurements. You saying getting used to the car is not a replicable system. Let's say I'm the instructor. I get my student, hey, I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. Oh, you get used to it. What kind of instructor? How are you going to learn? You're the person I would be teaching. He would start to believe in magic if I told him, hey, you have to get used to it. Instead of using measurements to do the process faster, he's now saying, oh, get used to it. What does that mean? You're going to confuse the person, right? And I'm aware of this. And that's the reason I was asking him, hey, what are your measurements that you're using? And factually, the measurements that he is using, he said he's using his car as hey, when I'm diagonal with the other car, then I turn. Is that a measurement? Yes. Is that measurement transferable to another car? Maybe and maybe not, right? If I have another car, because I did ask him this, but not this lesson, last lesson. And he was saying, oh, I only know this for my car. I don't know for this car. And you see, it's not, if we take that as true, that it's only used for that car, well, the concept of, hey, being diagonal to another car and then turning, that is transferable to any car. The concept. Now, will it work for every single car? Maybe and maybe not. Right? And most probably not, because we know that not every car is the same size. Even though that's still an assumption, right? I haven't factually tested this, and I haven't factually calculated how exactly the car is able to reverse in. He uses that reference point of the diagonal, the back of the car, diagonal, the back of our car diagonal to the back of the other car, the parallel car, right? The parallel car, and we're going to park behind it. Okay, we have to name the scenario. What's the scenario? We're going to park behind the car. Okay, park behind the car, then what do? Okay, you're going to go parallel to that car. Okay, parallel to that car. To which point? Until your back of the car is diagonal to the car that you're going to go behind. The back of your car is parallel to their back. The car that you're going to go behind, the car that you're going to go behind to, going to behind. You see, this is the reason I am learning English and how to write, because I need to know how to communicate what my brain is thinking, right? I can visually see what I'm trying to explain, but I don't have the exact right words to try and explain it. And hey, guess what? The driver was doing the same thing. He was trying to explain something to me from his brain, but he couldn't quite explain that to me. He is bilingual, and what does that have to do with his English? That's actually irrelevant. The reason I said he's bilingual, because I'm assuming that being bilingual, he has worse English than someone who would be speaking only English, right? That's the only reason I said that. Is that correct or not correct? I don't know. I don't have any statistical evidence on that, and we could say that's would you say it's a redundant comment? Is it a useless comment? Let's just forget I even said something like that. Let's remove that, and then, okay, he's trying to explain something in English. I couldn't fully understand what he's trying to say. He was getting agitated. He was even swearing in his native language. And I know this because I speak the language, but I don't speak the language. I never speak the language. And the reason I don't speak that language is because, what's the reason I would want to speak that language? Remember, I live in a country where, first, I'm going, my objective is to go out of this country, because the technology is very poor here. Health system is poor. What's the reason I'm mentioning the health system? Because of my tooth. Because of my tooth, right? And you come to find out that there aren't many clear solutions for something like I have, right? For what I have. And I did learn from it, and we're taking steps forward. I already have the plan of, hey, we're just going to reverse what we had, right? Let me go on the side tangent real quick and I'll come back. Remove the implant, augment the bone. Now, augment the bone, maybe we will, maybe we will not. It depends on how much bone loss we have. And then partially move the canine over there, and then the reason we do that is the bone will be able to get stimulated. But before we move anything, we're going to have our maxilla expanded, because as you see here, the maxilla is narrow, and we're going to expand it to, hey, I won't feel any more discomfort with my tongue, and guess what, I'm free from anything unnatural in my body. And you know how much cognitive energy that's going to free up? Insane. I wouldn't have to think about teeth or anything like that. And then once we have the biological regeneration of teeth, which I've already checked and it already worked on patients in Japan, and it was estimated to come out in 2030, and right now it's 2026, it's around 4 years until it comes out. Then I can go do that procedure. But right now we need to, hey, what's the healthiest option right now? Removing the implant, remove everything that's unnatural, expanding the jaw, and the prices for the jaw expansion isn't expensive. It's only, it depends which one you do. For the custom Marpi, it's around 15 grand, and then the FME, Phase Genix, that's the brand, is around 20 to 30 grand. Which one is better? For my objectives, I think custom Marpi is better, because we can have the reverse pull headgear to put the jaw forward. Because if you look at my side profile, even looking at me right now, you could probably tell that I have kind of a recessed jaw. If I look at, I'm not sure if I have a recessed jaw, but looking from the side profile sometimes isn't enough, right? You can, I'm not sure if you can see, but yeah, I don't think you can, but my wisdom teeth aren't fully erupted, perfectly aligned, right? My top ones, my bottom ones, I got them removed because I had localized pain. And do I need to talk about that? I can go on a quick side tangent. Localized pain, now it was probably because of food, because I remember not brushing my teeth over there, because they were growing perfectly straight. In the x-rays you could see they're going perfectly straight, and I still got them removed. And you know, that was a learning experience, right? You don't, and I remember going through this process with my mother, and I wasn't on my own doing this whole process, and everything I wanted to communicate, it was going through my mother. And your brain won't learn and won't be able to ask the important questions. For example, I had questions, instead of asking the practitioner, I was asking my mother. And my mother didn't have these experiences, or her brain doesn't have the experience, didn't learn to ask the proper questions. Therefore, me depending on my mother to ask the questions is the wrong algorithm, and it was inefficient in this scenario, right? And with these scenarios, you even have these explained in game theory, which that's very important to know, because you know that even psychology, game theory, psychology, right? Game theories in economics, I think even computer science, game theory. It's very important to know, because you realize, hey, you can measure this. It has been measured. And you're not, it's not you're not crazy. And a lot of people throw that term around, you're not crazy. What does crazy mean, right? The only reason you use the term crazy is because that's what your brain's been hearing. Therefore, I avoid using that word because it's not measurable using the term crazy. You might feel crazy, but you only feel that way because it's all you know. And we're trying to make the things you know as efficient. We're trying to make your brain know the things that are most efficient for the objective you have. And looking at what you perceive as crazy or using terms, example, oh, it's just experience, that's not something that's measurable. Right? It's a heuristic. Yes, it can save you energy. You can use that word to someone. For example, let's say you 2 PhD students. Is that a good example? Let's say you're 2 students. Let's say you're 2 people who understand something very deeply, and instead of going into the full detail, you use a heuristical word, and you can say, hey, experience. But you both know that that word experience has has more meaning to it, and you know how that experience was created. Therefore, it's a replicable system. That's the concept. It must be a replicable system. Just like the scientific method, right? You observe, you ask a question, you create a hypothesis, then you test it, and then you have the feedback loop. Okay, what happened? What's wrong? Okay, what should I do next? Okay, what's my next hypothesis? You test. And you do these tests based on an objective you have. You're not going to do random tests based on, hey, feeling. But there are brains which are conditioned to make tests based on their feelings. You just have to be aware of that. And with awareness comes the possibility of change. And it was a bit of a side tangent that I went for the tooth over here, or actually the wisdom teeth, which I did extract a lot of lessons from the teeth scenario, which, let me not go on another side tangent and just pause that. And I think one lesson that I took from there is always ask a third question. And always sleep on something that's irreversible. And I talked about this, right? I talked about this in one of my videos where, okay, let me break them down real quick. This is another side tangent. We connected, but it's still, you can still understand the structure that we're having. Driving tests, and then we're talking about the teeth procedures I had and what appointments I'm going for, and now we're extracting the lessons. Therefore, car, now we have dentist lessons, car, and now dentist lessons. And then we talked about something else, which was another lesson for objectives, and still relates to the dentist, which was the appointments and testing. 2 things. And okay, let's switch to them. I'm thinking about what should I talk about next, based on the objective I had for talking about the car, and based on what I've already said, to connect this clearly. And I think, say, okay, that's the lesson we took, and me explain those real quick. It was 2, the binary, from the lessons of the teeth. Always ask a third question. Okay, let me just say that fast. when there's a binary question, let's say, let's keep this in medical situations and you're patient to practitioner. When they say something is binary, hey, it's only this or that. Yes, this depends on certain situations, but ask a third question. But I think asking the third question is based on if you're going to make a decision. And maybe you ask a third question based on how you feel, and that's already a weakness we're seeing right now. That's an algorithm we have. Hey, when there's a binary question, you ask a third question. You keep the algorithm set as only those two, then as we're seeing right now, I'm asking more questions to try and strengthen this algorithm. Right, to try and strengthen it, because as we've seen, it doesn't account for every situation or every feeling you have. But the concept is still there. You ask a third question. When there's a binary question, hey, this or this, never. No. What's the third question? Ask a third question. Always. And you can refine that yourself. You have just go in your Google Docs, write algorithms. This is what I have. What I have is I have daily readings, what I read every day. These are algorithms that save cognitive energy and make decisions. And you study them, you just read them. Right? Do I read them every day? No, I don't. Some of them I have in my memory. Some of them I still don't have in my memory. And I don't read them every day. And I'm not reading them every day because right now I'm planning what I'm going to do. What am I going to study? What am I going to run for my online business? What am I going to learn every day? And I'm doing that. Another side tangent, many side tangents, but there are important lessons here that I probably would need a whole video giving all my algorithms that I use and open sourcing my brain. You could use that word. I'm going to open source my brain. And what was the lesson that I was going to talk about? I actually forgot exactly what I was going to talk about. It was a lesson. The reason that I stopped doing, or I'm doing this plan, and for a lesson that I learned was I'm realizing the technical bottlenecks, which I think I mentioned in the beginning of this video, which was I'm realizing I'm uneducated and I need to learn subjects. Hey, I'm reading this, I'm doing exercises, I'm applying this to the real world. Example, physics, economics, mathematics, biology, chemistry. Right? Knowing programming, computer science, knowing engineering, but doing the ones that move you the most forward based on your current situation. And for my situation, from what I calculated so far, is writing. Okay, writing and communication, being able to technically write accurately and stylistically. What that means is grammar and punctuation. Right, that's accurate with the technical aspects are accurate. Therefore, the English aspect and the accuracy aspect of the technical thing you're talking about. And that's very important because when I'm learning, I'm using an example for dentistry because that's where a lot of these stuff stem from something that's painful and uncomfortable, right? Or at least your brain experiences it that way, and you find the needs for these stuff. And that's the reason I'm using a lot of dentistry examples, because that was something that my brain couldn't understand. For what's the next step, and what I had to do was I had to learn about this dentistry stuff. I had to research the basics, right? The basics of, okay, what is this tooth called, right? What is my current situation, right? I have bone loss, and you would explain that it's still understandable saying bone loss, right? But even I was reading this book of dental complications, and they had my exact same scenario, right? And the exact scenario was, this is another side tangent, but let me go through it real quick. You have someone with a congenitally missing tooth, right? A tooth missing genetically, which is that genetics? I argue it's not, because of another side tangent. But let's say it's genetics. Well, actually, let me just explain the reason really quick. The reason I don't think it's genetics. The reason I don't think it was genetics is because I think my mouth was open when I was younger, and when I was younger, I'm talking about a baby, and I have photos when I can see myself with my mouth open in my mother's hands. And I think in that situation, and it's going to be another side tangent. What's the reason I even have this hypothesis? Is not, I actually got this from Dr. Mew, from Dr. John Mew, the son of, no, not John Mew, Dr. Mike Mew, the son of Dr. John Mew. And he was saying for the congenitally missing tooth that it could be an environmental factor as well as a genetic factor. He's not saying it's 100% an environmental factor. If you would say that, then based on what evidence, right? And clearly there isn't the concrete evidence, because if there was, it would be a fact. And could be those factors. And that's the hypothesis where I got it from his hypothesis of saying, hey, it's actually interconnected environmental. And I think he did that because he saw patterns as well from people who had narrow maxillas and missing teeth. And basically what happens, basically remove the word that I ever mentioned, basically, I do not want to ever use that word, delete. And then the teeth, since they're in this narrow, okay, since you have your mouth open and your tongue isn't stimulating your jaw and your jaw isn't widening, it's growing, then your teeth, some teeth grow smaller, which I had with the sun, or hair grows smaller, but they put composite bonding, make it bigger, and one of the teeth, the lateral incisor, right? The right lateral incisor doesn't grow, which is what happened to my situation. And okay, it didn't grow, and you see, this is the reason we don't go on many side tangents, because I can't recall exactly the reason we're on the side tangent. I know it's explaining the reason I have the missing tooth, but actually, should we just end it here? The lesson, we must take a lesson. The takeaway. Let me summarize. Number 1, car. Learned about the traffic lights, and the traffic lights can have different variations of how long, seconds, but we know one of them is 50 seconds from when it turns red to then turns green. And in this 50 seconds one, it was in a scenario of a T junction, and this T junction in particular contained, actually we're going too deep right now, we're going to go on another side tangent. Just keep it at that 50 seconds, and then different variations, and there are automatically controlled traffic lights, automatically, right, with algorithms, programs. I think machine learning you would call that. That's the reason we're learning computer science. Hold me on the side tangent. That's the reason we're learning computer science, to be able to understand everything around you and have no technical bottlenecks, and you can grow exponentially based on what evidence can you grow exponentially just because you know computer science and based on what you see. We're going on a side tangent because my brain just said something which, hey, let's pause, delete what I just said, the grow exponentially, just delete that and let's go back to what we were saying. The automatic, and there could be manual, there could be someone with a live camera. We're assuming live camera, we don't have that fact checked, and they can turn on the lights. When we got the car side out of the way, now let's move on to the second part, which is the lesson for the objective. One of the algorithms you should have is you should achieve, you have the structure, objectives and telos. You want to achieve your objectives with the lowest latency possible, while still keeping the telos in your mind, sustainable. The objectives that you're doing, the algorithm that you're having for the objectives must be sustainable for the telos, must be able to be used for the telos. And then we know that there are conditionals. Right, that some objectives, telos, algorithms to achieve the objectives must be sustainable for the telos. Right? And we know that there could be different variations. Sometimes they're not sustainable for the telos, but they're still the most efficient right now to achieve your objectives, and in consideration with your telos as well, you know you're going to change your algorithms and you're aware of that. You know you're doing these algorithms short term, or for how long you want to do them, based on what you calculated to achieve your objectives efficiently. And by unlocking these objectives, you're able to get to your telos. You see, it's not binary, it's conditional. It's conditional, and I think that was the third lesson as well. It's not binary, it's conditional. And a fourth lesson, which connects to the binary, you ask a third question always. And I think a fifth lesson, which we didn't get over with, was that you sleep on something that's irreversible. If you're going to do something irreversible, example, let's take my wisdom teeth for example, and let's say you're in a situation, and I think I got into this in a previous video, but I was hesitant on removing the wisdom teeth while I was going to get my wisdom teeth, because she said, hey, do you want to remove the upper ones as well? And in that scenario, my brain was thinking, okay, what's the reason she's telling me to remove the upper ones if we had the appointment to remove only the lower ones? Therefore, I'm starting to think, hey, we don't actually need to remove these wisdom teeth. Which, is that thinking accurate? Well, how I would think in a scenario, I wouldn't value the doctor's, not I wouldn't value, but I wouldn't base my decision based on what the doctor is saying. I would base it based on physics and biology. And physics is biology, biology is physics. There's no biology without physics. But physics, biology and chemistry. we're talking about the actual physics, right? What's the reason? You would ask the questions before ever doing something irreversible. But let's remove that situation entirely, and let's say you don't have the answers to anything, and you're in a position where you're still hesitant about something. You're hesitant about something doing irreversible, and you're hesitant, okay? You have a question, you have something, you're not sure. What do you do in that situation? You sleep on it, always. You don't do that surgery. If you're hesitant about it in this situation, and let's say even if you ask a question and you get your question answered, should you make that decision? If it's something irreversible, this is something irreversible we're talking about. Yes, it may depend on the situation, but it's something irreversible. And yes, you might factor in, hey, if I don't do this, I might die. And that could be something in the algorithm that you refine, but it's the concept. Something irreversible. You ask a question, if you can't, even if you get it answered, you might still have to sleep on it. And one thing that I mentioned in the last video, and I'm saying I mentioned it in the last video, to first help myself understand that, hey, I did mention this, and I'm giving myself context, hey, I did mention this, and to keep count, right? Because I'm saying I mentioned it in the last video, okay, this is the second time I'm mentioning it. That's the only reason I'm saying it, and the reason that, hey, you can go watch that video as well, if you want to. But I'm still going to explain it here because it's short. And okay, let me explain it. You should, what I did say is, you tell the practitioner, hey, I want to go to the bathroom. And guess what you do? You go out of the building, you walk out the building. That's it. That's what you do. You walk out the building. And you don't do that surgery because, hey, it's your body. Your health is the most important thing. Always. Your health is always the number one thing. Always. Always, always, always. Think about anything that you do. It's all revolved around your health. Every single thing you do. Even if you watch entertainment, you're still doing that for your health. Hey, actually, I'm not doing it for my health. I'm doing it because I feel good and everything. What's the reason? Okay, I'm still simplifying it. What's the reason you want to feel good? It still has to relate with your brains and the secretion of hormones in your brain, dopamine. And probably you're explaining it as you feeling as good. It's because of other unmeasured things. But this is a whole other side tangent, and what we've learned from this video in itself, we went on a lot of side tangents, and those side tangents led to other side tangents. Let's keep this side tangent paused, even though it's very important. But I will get to that in another video, because right now we need to mention the summary. And I think that's it, right? That might be everything. This was the 5th lesson, 5th point, 2nd lesson, or 3rd lesson. And the main lesson from this video, the one I've been mentioning but still not verbally saying it, because I haven't calculated it yet. What's the lesson we're going to take? What's the lesson we're going to take from this video? Should we have it from our lesson that we had today? We talked about the algorithm. We could have that one as the lesson. Maybe we take that one as the lesson. Was this very important? Okay, let's take that one as a lesson. Actually, should I just give a quick sidetrack, a side note of my car? Because this was supposed to be a narration of what I did at the car ride. Okay, let me just give a quick. And we know the main lesson is about the objective and tailors, because that's very, 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 very important. Because that could define your actions every day. And you must have your objectives first before then you can get any more algorithms, right? And maybe we can explain what this telos is later, but let's have narration for what we did at the driving thing. And I still haven't explained the full reversing, I think. Reversing, and there was some miscommunication. He was using reference points for his car, which I realized, hey, this might not be transferable to every car. And I didn't go into deeper detail asking him, hey, what's the main principle that I can apply for every car, because I did say that last lesson, not this lesson, but the one before it, and he couldn't answer that question. The only thing he did give, which was isomorphic, is knowing the measurement of how much your car turns, which I did mention it in the last car lesson video, which how was the distance, the length, and it would take, if you turn your full steering wheel until it does a U-turn, so parallel to where it started, the starting position, how much distance, how much surface area would you say? How much length, surface area would it take? You see, that's really a weakness in my physics and mathematics, which we're working on every day. And what would be the distance for that? And I think that's a helpful metric for knowing the reversing. But I haven't gave it much thought, this reversing thing, and how to calculate it for every single car. And back to his metrics, the back of our car to the back of the other car at a diagonal angle, which is, what would that be? That would be a 45-degree angle, right? Exactly, that would be a 45-degree angle, a diagonal angle. That's a 45-degree angle. Right, and this from the back of our car. So this is the back of the car. Let's see. If I want to explain something like that, I should share my screen and show it on a whiteboard, not a whiteboard, but those, a digital board. That would be more efficient, right? Maybe that's something I will do in the next video, or when I unbox my MacBook Pro, because I still haven't unboxed it yet, because I'm creating the plan, which I've already talked about in the middle of the video, if I'm not mistaken. And let's go to the car, the diagonal. Okay, diagonal, and then you turn one wheel to the left, 360 degrees. Okay, you turn 360 degrees, and then he was talking about the keyhole. Once the keyhole in the mirror shows that it's on the edge of the what is it called? The passageway? It's like the side street where people walk. What's that called? Where people walk. Side street where people walk. Name. Sidewalk or pedestrian? I think it's the sidewalk. Pavement. The pavement. I think it's the pavement. Wait, actually, no, I don't think it's the pavement. See, this is pavement road. What if I just ask? I'm way off track right now. Let me ask AI, GPT, ChatGPT. What is the sidewalk? Sidewalk. Proper definition. Proper term. Name. My English has to improve. A sidewalk. A sidewalk or pavement. Footpath. Yeah, sidewalk. A sidewalk. Let me delete that chat. Delete. Where were we? Over here. Sidewalk. When the keyhole looks on the mirror on top of the sidewalk, you then turn fully to the right, and then you would be able to park. What you have also is, and then you would park, and then I found that he got impatient when I asked him questions in this scenario. What's the reason, right? And I did ask him questions. Hey, do other students what happens in the situation? Do they understand? Do they ask questions? And he was saying, hey, they don't. They get it around the third, second time, but they don't ask questions or have arguments with me. That's what he termed it, is arguments with me. And I told him, hey, I'm not arguing with you. I'm asking you questions which arguments, let's see definition of arguments definition. An argument is a set of statements known as premises designed to provide evidence, support, or logical reasoning for a final statement, the conclusion. Therefore, a question is not an argument. Based on this definition, and over here, the next part, if we're reading the whole paragraph, in its broadest sense, it is a method of persuasion or logical defense of a specific claim. I was asking questions, I was gathering data to understand what he's talking about. And you don't want to train your brain to take something as it is, right? Example, when he uses the term, hey, it's legally, we have to do that. What's the reason you legally have to do that? Always assume, hey, you're not going to take something as it is, right? For you to take something as it is, it means it doesn't make sense, right? It's not biological. Doing something because it doesn't exist, that doesn't exist, say that doesn't exist, it's not how anything works. You don't do something just because it's like that, right? Something happened because the law happened based on some evolution of something and needs. There isn't going to be created a law just randomly, right? It doesn't happen. And for you to say, hey, this is just the law, it means you don't understand how it was created. That's a simple fact. Or maybe you do understand it. Let's take it from his perspective. Right, remember, don't just take it from your perspective, always take it from the other person's perspective, always. Especially when it's something that you don't agree on, for example. And that will be the argument that we just defined. You take it from look at it from his perspective. Let's say he's saying his students every single time. And let's say his students are asking these questions. Which, number one, he said his students don't ask questions. He didn't explicitly say that. Although maybe he did and I don't remember. But he said they don't do it like me. And I was asking questions, therefore I'm going to assume that they don't ask him questions. And I'm also assuming that because sometimes he does have a student in his car while we're driving back. Right? Because I drive him somewhere, I go in the back, then he has another student and he drives me to my home. Right? Or to where I met with the instructor. And I don't see the person asking a lot of questions to the instructor. And that doesn't mean it's a good thing or a bad thing. The person might not need to have to ask. The person driving, the student, might not need to ask the instructor questions because he might already know the answers to those questions. But I've seen commands by the instructor saying, hey, you should not do that. And then the student says, okay, without reason. And I don't like taking anything without reason, anything. I don't care. What's the reason I would take something without reason, right? I would only do that if it would be efficient to do that, right? And is it efficient to say? Because remember, it's not only because of that, it's because when your brain would need to recall that information, it can have a connection of data points, because not only do I know that I don't need to do that, but I know the reason that I don't need to do that. And I know the reason that I don't need to do that and the cause of the reason of me not needing to do that, and that knowing, whoa, let me step back a little bit. Okay, you don't do that, and then I know the reason you don't do that, example, some explanation, and then I know the cause of that explanation. That's 3 connections, right? And you're connecting that with yourself, which, say that's 4 connections. Versus, hey, I'm not going to do that. And you just leave it as it is, that's 2 connections, right? I'm not going to do that versus it's connected with you, that's 2. That's less connections than the other one, right? Therefore, you might remember it less. Right? You might remember that instruction less just because you don't know the exact reason. But not even that, even when it comes to building something or even communicating something, if you train your brain to just take something as it is, then how are you going to grow? How are you going to replicate the system? How are you going to understand the world that's around you? If you don't ask, hey, what is this? How did this come from? Where did this come from? How does this work? You're just going to take things as it is, and you're just going to be an employee, right? You could say you're just going to be an employee forever. What you're going to do is just follow instructions. Do you want to do that? How are you going to achieve your talos if you're going to do that? You can. Forget. Let's see. It was a little bit of. Delete that behavior I just did. It was a bit inefficient. But how can you do that? If you just follow instructions and never question anything, how are you going to create something? If you follow the rules, then how is anything going to be created? It would already exist, right? If my talos is living forever and I just follow rules, that's, first of all, that's very simplified. What are we talking about rules? Because we know that you're going to be with scientists and researchers and you're doing research, but you're doing research based on what? How does it work? Is someone controlling that research? You need to do tests based on what you think would achieve these instructions, right? And maybe you control the scientific researchers, but then you would think, hey, what if I'm not knowledgeable enough and someone should tell me what to do? And I don't think it works like that. This telling to do thing, it all depends on incentives and businesses, right? If you go onto the foundation, hey, I'm living, and to live I need energy, I need food, water, I need to excrete the waste from my body, and I need to breathe air. Those are the basic fundamentals, and we know there's businesses, and we know there's resources, we know there's the environment. We know you can get these resources from certain environments. We know we have a set of tools, right? And we know some of these tools might not be available in some places. And we know people need the money to be able to buy food X, Y, and Z. And we know that, hey, you could have all the knowledge. You could have every PhD and everything, but if you don't have the control to be able to do, if you don't have the resources to use, or let's say you have the whole plan. Let's say you're able to know, hey, if I do this plan and I know the exact materials, I will live forever. But guess what? Let's say you're one person on your own. Let's say you don't have let's say you know the materials, but you don't have the materials, you don't have the resources. You know where to get them from, but you don't have anyone to help you. How are you going to get them with yourself, on your own? And you can't live forever, even though it's all in your brain, it's all in the knowledge, but you can't execute it in real life. And I think it's a very important lesson to consider in your talos, or even your objectives, right? It's an isomorphic principle, we can say, an isomorphic principle. And to keep this, where did I get this isomorphic principle from? Because, hey, when I used to watch YouTube, for example, I did watch around 2 videos, I think, in the past 2 weeks, and this was for my job, since I was going for an employment. But before that, around 6 months or 5 months, didn't watch any YouTube, or actually maybe longer. I didn't watch any YouTube, but I didn't watch YouTube as in going on YouTube and seeing recommended and clicking on it. I only went on YouTube on something I knew I wanted to search on. That's the difference. And actually, if we're talking about watching YouTube based on recommended, I can't remember the last time I did that. That could be around 8 months ago, maybe. And actually, what was my point? You see that side tangent? What was my point? YouTube. Forgot my point. What's the reason I have YouTube mentioned? What was I even talking about? Lesson, principle. Watching someone and then not knowing where their word came from. They say a word, then when they say that word, hey, where did they learn this from? And then you start to think that everything is magic. Okay, this isomorphic principle, I learned it from reading this book, but I don't have it as a book. I actually have it digitally, and I installed it online using Anna's archive. Actually, I didn't use Anna's archive. I used zlib. I used their Discord to download the book. I think that's how I got the book. And the name is General Systems Theory. And in General Systems Theory, this book was made around 1967, somewhere along those dates. And what it does in this book, it gave an overview. It had read the sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, psychology, and it tries to connect them and shows that this is a whole system, and mathematics always. This is a whole system. And he was talking about isomorphic principles, finding something that you can apply to every domain. And you go search this up, what does isomorphic mean? Let's see what it shows us on Google. Isomorphic means having the same or similar structure, shape, or form, but typically consisting of different underlying elements. You have the same, and let's read the second part, derived from the Greek words iso, equal, parentheses equal, and morph, parentheses form. Iso means equal and morph means form. It is a core concept used across several distinct disciplines. And this makes sense how we're using it, right? Because structure, we're using principles with the same structure that we can apply to different domains, and these domains have different elements. And that's... Should I end it here? Okay. Isomorphic principles and... I think that's it, right? And we already named the car, and then we said we have this final lesson. And we, for the car part, the reversing, we did it, and we said we always want to ask questions, because if you don't ask questions, then how are you growing? And we can make that, and that's a principle, right? You ask questions, and it obviously depends on the scenario, but that's the concept, and which I will make a video outlining everything structured, outlining these principles and algorithms structured, and as I said before, open sourcing my brain. And the reason I will be doing this is, first, number one, feedback. I would get feedback from my audience. Number two, what's the reason I want to connect with people who, number one, let's say, who think like me, are in the same, let's say, position as mine, or same experiences. I didn't say that was something that's something that's always on my mind. I did not say I said same. Actually, I did kind of say to work on your communication skills. And that's another thing I need to work on. I need to work on pausing, saying something, and then remembering what I was saying. That's another thing I have to work on. That's another reason I make these videos as well. Making the video which want to connect with people, right, in my same scenario, who have similar experiences, people who can give feedback and even share their own. What was the reason you want to share your own experience? What's the reason I'm even doing these videos? What's the reason I want to share anything? How does it benefit? Again, it benefits me because I can learn, number one. Number two, when I'm sharing my business, example, plans, strategies, hey, I could connect with people who, say, are watching me, and since we have the same interests, and I could even get a business partner from there. Number three, I'm improving my communication. That was a major part of the reason I'm doing this. I improve my communication skills. Because now I'm talking to the camera. I've been talking for around 1 hour and 52 minutes. I wouldn't be talking for 1 hour and 52 minutes on my own, right? Usually when I do that, or let's say when I did do that, because I used to do that, but I used to do that in my brain. Or you would be talking to artificial intelligence, and basically, again, we don't want to use the word basically, remove the word basically, delete, I never said that. And the more we talk, the less we say basically, and the more videos I publish, the less the word basically will be said in the videos, until it won't exist. And guess what? What were we talking about? We were talking about nothing, because how can we talk about something that doesn't exist, right? How can your brain interpret something that doesn't exist? We're talking about that doesn't exist. Let's continue what we were talking about. And we're talking about what's the reason I assigned my brain for something to not exist. And I think I overdid that to everything I said in the video, which that's not what I intended to do. I only intended to do that on a specific something, which you can probably replay the video and pause. Let's skip. We're talking about people, we're talking about me speaking to the camera, reason, communication. then connecting with people, getting me closer to my objectives. I name my objectives. I can get feedback from people as well. Let's say I name an objective that I have. Hey, and yeah, someone from your audience, hey, my experience this, I learned this and that. Hey, can I join you? I want to connect with you. Hey, let's connect and let's be business partners X, Y, and Z. Does it work like that? Will it work like that? Maybe, maybe not. You test. I'm just using one of the many examples, one of the many reasons that I'm doing these videos. Selling something. Would I use YouTube as selling something? Maybe or maybe not. It depends. It depends on your audience. I don't want to attract an audience that right now it's all I'm thinking about right now is communicating, improving my communication and just sharing my experiences. That's what I'm focusing on right now. Doesn't matter what audience I have. Does it? Right now, if my objective is communication and communicating to the camera, that's my objective, and I'm doing it right now, as we have seen for 1 hour and 56 minutes and the previous videos, and my progress. Right, I'm seeing my own progress through these videos. And is it for me to look back at these videos? No. And that's another thing we can talk about for looking at previous photos and everything, which I don't believe in. Not that I don't believe in. It's not about believing in anything. It's about efficiency. Is it efficient to look back at photos? Sometimes it can be. Sometimes it's not efficient to look at photos, right? If you're using a photo that would affect the next decisions that you would take, then yes, it would be efficient to look at that photo. Right? And another example that can match with these videos, I can watch my videos and let's say I see 20 of my videos and I see a common pattern, a weakness in my communication, for example, that I wasn't aware of, and I've been doing it for 20 whole videos. But guess what? Now because I recorded the videos and I had the videos recorded, as I just said right now, I can improve on my weaknesses, and that's an efficient way for you to use the videos, right? An inefficient way for watching videos, if I say, hey, I'm going to watch my videos just for, hey, I feel like watching my videos, just like that. I already know what my videos consist of. What's the reason I would look at my videos just because I feel as looking at my videos? That doesn't. What about your objectives? What about your task that you have? Where did that go? Don't you have a task to do? Or tasks to do? Doing something based on feelings. Right, and I'm not going to go deeper on that because I would need to place facts to be able to talk on that. I don't want to speak on assumptions, right? No one cares about assumptions or opinions. We want facts. Okay. Even though I just spoke for 1 hour and 59 minutes talking about my experiences, but those are okay. When you say opinions, and you see, that's already I shouldn't have said that, right? Maybe that wasn't efficient to say. And I was only able to say that because I just recalled my own memory to analyze what I just said, if that makes any sense. Even though it making sense depends on my brain's data already. Pause on that, let's not go on a tangent, let's continue. And I think we should end it here. guys, on the 2 hour mark, we learned from that lesson, and now let's go with the final lesson, which was the algorithm. Okay, the algorithm equals telos, objectives, algorithms to objectives. The algorithms used for objectives, what you want to achieve your objectives with the lowest latency possible. Okay, objectives, telos, you want to achieve your objectives with the lowest latency possible. But, okay, so we have a policy for this constraint, but to achieve them with the lowest latency possible, they must also be sustainable or they must still allow you to achieve your telos. Okay, because if you are able to achieve your objectives but you know 100% certainty if you achieve your objectives and then you cannot get to your telos, then you shouldn't do this. You should change what you're about to do. And does that work for every scenario? No. You might have and as we said, it's never binary, right? It's conditional, mostly, right? Let's not say everything, let's say mostly. Right? We don't want to say nothing is binary, right? Let's say it's mostly conditional. There might be scenarios where it is binary, and might be scenarios where it's not binary, but you must be aware that it's mostly conditional, right? Because everything is connected with each other. Almost everything is interconnected with each other. Look at it as a system, as a whole. Okay, and that again comes from the general systems theory that I just talked about around 15 to 20 minutes ago. And the scenarios that the objectives, that you want to achieve your objectives with the lowest latency possible, while still making it possible when you achieve them to get your telos. Sustainable is still sustainable for the telos. And we said that the sustainable, we use that word mostly because of the algorithms that you would use for the objective. And we said also the conditional side of this is sometimes, hey, you might use an algorithm to achieve your objectives, and that algorithm might not be sustainable for your long-term objectives, your telos, but by unlocking these objectives, that's the first step that you needed to get to these telos. Even though the algorithm wasn't that efficient, even the algorithm wasn't sustainable for the telos, the algorithm was still the most efficient in the scenario, or one of the most efficient in the scenario, or you could say the most efficient, right? It was still one of the most efficient algorithms to use, even though long term this algorithm is not efficient when you look at it. It's not efficient for the telos. It's not sustainable. But for the objective, actually it is the most efficient, and this objective allows as a step closer towards the telos. And we know the algorithm now, hey, we know it must change in the future for the next objectives to achieve the telos, okay, for the next objectives that you would do, right? Objective 1, 2, objective 3, objective 4, objective 5, objective 6, to then reach the telos. And we know the algorithms, hey, they could change, and we have the algorithm, we learn, And then we have another objective, and then, hey, let's test this in the algorithm. Let's refine it, right? Or maybe let's remove something. Let's modify it. Algorithm, use, change, right? Or even stay with the same algorithm, right? If it's working, maybe stay with the same algorithm. Objective, 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 tails. And this is the lesson I wanted to leave you with. We always want to get one lesson out of the video that I would be speaking about. We always want to extract something from what I'm speaking about, one lesson. And your action, right? We always want to extract an action as well. Write it down in your, go on Google Docs, create a document, algorithms, and you don't have to read them every day for now, but even have that, just have that in your paper, because the next time you do something similar to this, a similar process of writing down the algorithms sheet, you would be able to, you would already know what that is, right? And you would lose less energy to do that, and then more likely to form a habit, right? And you write it down in the algorithm. Now, what I just said, don't take everything as, what I just said, don't take everything as facts. Okay, I'm just stating, literally, I just said what's on my brain right now. And how I process it, right? I look at it, hey, you go write in the document, hey, it's a process you've done. And then the next time example, I tell you the next video, hey, write this in your algorithm sheet. Hey, now you already know what an algorithm sheet is, right? That's a fact. You already know what an algorithm sheet is. You already know where it is, right? It's in your Google Docs here. Now you can go back and even see your other algorithm that you've written down. And guess what? Now in the third lesson, I could tell you, hey, now I want you to read this. Maybe I want you to go read them right now, or maybe read them once a week. And that's how you can start to create habits, right? By having energy in your brain, literally energy in your brain. That's how your brain works, energy. Having that free energy being able to be used on doing that process. Because if I tell you, hey, do a Google Docs, open a Google Docs sheet, write algorithm, place the algorithm, and I want you to read it every day. That's around 4 steps, right? Versus if I told you, hey, go read the algorithm that you have in your Google Docs, that's 1 step, because the other 3 steps, you already done them, let's say 2 weeks ago. And let's say I did that already 2 weeks ago, and you know that already. Therefore, now all you're thinking about is one thing, not those 4 things. Do you see that difference? And now look at it at a higher scale, right? And you could start to see how that's beneficial in the process. And we can talk about it in another video. And that's it from this video. And then next week, right, the lesson next week, that's it.